planning on visiting one church a week, a different church. So I guess this is what the church world calls church hopping. So I'll be church hopping for the next month, off and on. As I church hop, I will tell you guys about the ratings and what I see, based on my own personal convictions. It's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Hey guys, so I kind of wanted to come back and just tell you what I thought about METANOYA Church. It was an awesome experience. I got there a little late, so the worship service or the singing was already done by the time I got there. So I only got there for preaching, which was okay to me. But Pastor Jubal was on point. What I really liked about his sermon, this one in particular, I don't know if he preaches like this all the time, but what I liked about his sermon was that he not only brought the Bible, but he brought historical documents from the Jewish people. Somebody, Josephus, was a Jewish historical person who talks about, the biblical scriptures and things that happened in the Bible times in accordance with historical proof. And he brought that into Luke chapter 3. So it was really, really good. His message was on point and it really just hit hard. God bless you guys. I hope you're blessed with this video, and may the Lord just bless you guys. Thank you for watching.
If your life was a commercial, what would you be advertising? What are you advertising? If your life was a commercial, what are you advertising? If your life is a commercial, think about this. What are you advertising? I want you to think about that the entire message as we're talking. So today we're in part 2 of our Investigating Jesus series. We started a series last week because in 5 weeks we're celebrating Easter or Resurrection Day. And it's a big day for all the followers of Jesus. Actually, it's the biggest day for the followers of Jesus. And a lot of people wonder why we celebrate it. And so we decided to take a step back and go, okay, we believe in Jesus. We know about Jesus and we talk about Jesus and we worship Jesus. But there's a lot of people that don't know why we do it. There's a lot of skeptics, a lot of young people that are going to school whose professors are going, well, that's just a story and that's just make believe in a fairy tale. A lot of universities that don't give credit to the scripture. And so a lot of young people are growing up going, I might be atheist. I might be agnostic. I don't know. My family were Christians, but I may not be a Christian. I don't even know what I believe when it comes to faith. And so I said, why don't we take a step back and do an investigation of Jesus and look at it from a skeptic's perspective and go, let's find out if there was really a man named Jesus who existed. Let's find out if we know he was real. How do we know he says who he says he was? And why do we follow this man? And why do we worship him? And why do we sing songs to him? And I made some statements last week like this one. The Christian life is anchored in a person named Jesus Christ. The Christian faith is anchored in a person named Jesus Christ. And this man was a man from a city called Nazareth. Now, if you're in a place where you're questioning your faith or you're questioning Christianity, if you don't know if Jesus is real, you're questioning if what he was who he says he was. Look, the real question isn't, is Jesus real? The real question is, are the accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are they legit? Those documents there, are they legit? Here's why. Because if they are legitimate documents, if they are true, if what they say is true, then Jesus is exactly who he said he was, and then you might want to consider following Jesus. When Luke is writing this letter to his friend, Luke is not writing the Bible. Luke had no idea there would ever be a Bible. He's not writing religious literature. Because some of you guys are going, it's just in the Bible, it's religious, y'all believe everything. This letter was not the Bible. It was a letter to his friend. He's writing an investigative report to his friend Theophilus. He's telling him the story about a man named Jesus to his friend. A story that should have never been told because it was a story of a small town carpenter who had turned into a teacher, and that should have never made history. Except for one major event that happened at the end of this guy's life. But before Jesus shows up, he has an opening act too. Does anybody know who the opening act for Jesus was? John the Baptist. I want you to pay attention to how Luke talks about John the Baptist, right? He doesn't tell us like, hey, once upon a time there was a guy named John. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there was a guy named John, right? No, look what Luke does. He gives us historical facts. He gives us times and dates and names and locations. And let me tell you something why he's doing this. He's doing this so that anyone could verify and fact check him. Here's why. We live in a world of fake news, right? And in a world of fake news, Luke is daring every skeptic to go, I'm going to give you the date and the time and the location and all the people involved, and I'm going to give you everything. So if you doubt me, you fact check me. Here's what Luke says in chapter 3 of verse 1. He says this. This is how Luke starts talking about John. He says, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, Herod, tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea and Trachonitis, and Licinius, tetrarch of Abilene. You know what Luke does? Luke doesn't go, hey, you remember when Pontius Pilate was in charge? You know, he ran the country for 50 years, somewhere in between there. Luke goes, no. I'm going to tell you. It wasn't even during, watch this. Let's go back to that verse. He says, not during the reign of Tiberius Caesar. He says, in the 15th year of his reign. I'm going to tell you exactly when this happened. When Pontius Pilate was the governor. When Herod, the tetrarch of Galilee, was in charge. Look, you know what he was doing? He was dropping a pin, a GPS pin in history and going, fact check me. This is exactly when it happened. Now, in our day, it would be like me saying this. You remember back in 2020 on March 15th when the whole world shut down? They told us a pandemic was going on. And do you remember that they told us it was going to be 2 weeks and then we would go back to normal? And do you remember that time when everybody bought up all the toilet paper at H-E-B? And then everybody here would go, oh, yeah, I would say that's when it happened. Why? Because you can pinpoint a time by names and dates and occasions and events. That's what Luke's doing here. And let me tell you why it's so important. Verse 1 is so important to the story of Jesus. And let me tell you why. Whenever you're writing fiction, whenever you're writing a make-believe story, whenever you're writing something that's not true, you never give specific times. You never give specific dates because it's too easy to fact-check that person and debunk them. Right? You've known this before when you get in trouble when you're dating. Well, who was there? You know, there's a lot of people. What time did you get home? Late. You never give specific times. Right? Who was there? Frank. Let me call Frank. No, Frank. I don't know if he was there. I thought he was there. It looked like Frank. When you're making up a story, you never give facts and details. They can fact check you and debunk you immediately. So when you read Luke's story sounds like history. And you know why it sounds like history? Because it is history. He's specifically telling you when this happened. He says this in verse 2. During the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, he's going, hey, you remember when Nuremberg was the mayor? You remember when Trump was president? You remember when Biden became president? You remember the Russia scandal? He's specifically tying you into a time. He goes, the high priest, here's who they were during that time, Annas and Caiaphas. He's specifically giving you details and going, let me give you so much detail that anybody can fact check this when they want to. Why? Because he wasn't lying.